We're ready to go. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Bruce Rivers. I'm the Executive Director here at Covenant House, Toronto. It is my honor to welcome all of you, our partners in community, youth, as well as youth-serving agencies, and in particular, I wanted to welcome our Minister, Coteau, who is the Minister of Children and Youth Services, as well as the Minister responsible for anti-racism. I also wanted to welcome Deputy Minister Nancy Matthews. And in a minute, I'm going to be introducing a very important figure in our province, parliamentary assistant to the Minister. If I could just say a couple of words to open. It's such an honor to have you all here at Covenant House. For those of you that are not aware of the work that we do at Covenant House, we've grown over the years to be the largest organization of its kind supporting homeless youth. And those young people come from all parts of Canada and actually beyond. Upwards of 250 young people a day. And it's under one roof that we have everything that we believe a young person needs to move forward with their lives. Not only emergency shelter, but also transitional housing, educational, job preparation supports, as well as a full service health clinic and school on site, as well as counseling. And then we also have a drop-in center, and we also have apartments in the community. Since we opened our doors, it would be, 35 years ago? 90,000 young people have come through those doors from all parts of the country. That is huge. We've also noticed over that period of time that a number of those young people have come out of what we would call service systems, child welfare being a very significant one, upwards of 40–50% of those young people having prior contact with child welfare. So with that as a backdrop, I just wanted to say how pleased I know our community partners are with the process that the ministry has undertaken over the last few years to consult and to engage. We're most grateful for the opportunity to have you all here as leaders today, and it's now my honor to invite Sophie Koala to come up, MPP for Kingston and the Islands. Sophie is Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Children and Youth Services, as well as the Minister for Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation. Please, Sophie. Thank you.
I almost went flying there. That's good. I have to say that this is absolutely tremendous to be here today. I know that the ministry has been working on this for a very, very long time. And just before I get into my remarks, I do want to also acknowledge the traditional lands that we are sharing today. I think it's important that we do that each and every time we make formal presentations. So, the other thing I wanted to say is that I know how much work has gone into this change that we're about to learn more about today. And walking into the building, you know, you do all the work in the background and you involve all the stakeholders that I know that you've been part of this process. But when you walk in the door, it suddenly hit me, and I felt a bit emotional coming in the door. I know how much of a difference this is going to make, and I know what a remarkable contribution each and every one of you have put forward. So I want to commend you on your work. You're there for youth in our communities every single day. You're providing direct services to children, youth, and young adults, for building stronger neighborhoods and giving people a sense of belonging in their community. I want to thank you for serving young people and their families through difficult times, for counseling and guiding them when they need it the most, for helping young children and youth find the path forward and providing them with the opportunities that they need to get ahead. I want to thank you for your advocacy, for reminding us why we do what we do and that the work is never done. because there's always more that we can do to protect and support children and youth, and we know that. Today marks an important milestone in the journey to continuously improve services so that children have the opportunities that they need to reach their very full potential. I'm very proud of the work that our government is doing and the work planned ahead to improve lives for children and youth. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming my colleague, Minister of Children and Youth Services, Michael Coteau.
Well, thank you very much, MPP Koala. I appreciate the introduction, and I too want to recognize that we're on the traditional territory of the Mississauga of the New Credit, and give thanks and recognition to our Indigenous heritage and culture here in the province of Ontario. I want to thank Bruce for welcoming us here today. I know that for, as you said, for almost 3.5 decades, your organization has been doing incredible work here in Toronto. And I know that your reputation is not limited to Toronto or Ontario, but it's right across this country. I just want to say thank you to you and your staff for the work you do every single day to protect young people and give them an opportunity to really go out there and build themselves and become the citizens they deserve to be. I want to just take a quick opportunity to thank all of the folks who are here who are from the child welfare, child protection sector. Thank you for the work you do every single day. I know we have the child advocate here today. We have the deputy minister who is responsible for children and youth services. So I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for being here. We're here today because we all share the same goal. We want to make sure that young people have the opportunity to really reach their full potential. And I think how well we're doing as a society is revealed best by how we treat our children. And as an MPP, as a minister responsible for this file, as a minister responsible for anti-racism, as a community member, as an uncle, as a family man, as a father, for me, it is, I think, the utmost importance to ensure that we do everything we possibly can do to make sure that young people, that children are at the heart of all of the decision-making we make. So I've been the Minister for Children and Youth Services now for just under 6 months, and it's been a short time. But in that short time, I've learned a lot. One thing I've heard loud and clear is that it's become so obvious to me that change is necessary, and we need to make improvements in our child welfare system. The call for change is not new. I know that many people in this room have been fighting for this change for years. However, from what I can see, we have an opportunity now. The window's open. Right now, I see service providers, I see politicians, I see advocates, I see families, everyone looking for change to happen. So I see a system that's willing to open up for change. And for too long, the system has focused on problems facing children and youth and not enough on their voice, their opinions, their thoughts, and their goals. So I'm here to tell you today that out of all of this, at the end of the day, we're here to make change. It's about change. So this afternoon, and it was probably less than an hour ago, I proudly introduced the new Child, Youth and Family Services Act, a piece of legislation that, if passed, will put the focus on where it belongs, and that's on children and youth. The legislation would, if passed, replace the Child and Family Services Act with a modern, child-centered act that, at its core, will strengthen the rights of children and youth. The legislation would affirm the rights of children through the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, recognize the importance of diversity and inclusion, and the need to continue to address systemic racism, and build on the goals of Caitlin's principle by clearly stating that every child needs to be seen, heard, and respected, and at the center of all decision-making. The legislation would accomplish this by focusing on 4 priority areas. First, protection and prevention. so that families receive the services they need to succeed. This means a stronger commitment to prevention and early intervention to help children and families in avoiding reaching a crisis in the first place. It means delivering more culturally appropriate child welfare services to Black children and youth and their families through the implementation of the One Vision, One Voice practice framework developed by the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies and in partnership with leaders in the Black community. And I'm proud to announce that this means raising the age of protection to provide all 16 and 17-year-olds access to child protection services in order to reduce the risk of homelessness and human trafficking. And I'm proud to say that if passed, that particular component, the age of protection, will help as many as 1,600 young people in its first year of implementation. The second priority area is quality improvement to better support coordinated, more efficient services with better data sharing. And this would help ensure that young people and their families don't have to keep telling their stories over and over and over again. The third thing we're focusing on is an increase in accountability and oversight. We heard loud and clear last year from the Auditor General's report and from advocates in the sector that we need to do a better job at monitoring, better job at oversight and transparency in order to have an effective system. And that's exactly what this legislation seeks to provide. And finally, something that I'm very proud of is support for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit children and youth and families through an acknowledgement of our government's unique relationship with our partners and through services that respect their culture, their heritage, and their traditions. And on this, I just want to take a moment to reflect on my journey over the last 6 months. I've had the opportunity to go to many First Nations communities across the province, and I've been told that their children are being removed from their communities. I'm being told that when you have a child removed from a community, it creates anxiousness among the family. People are left heartbroken. It creates turmoil in communities, and there's a lot of grief that's experienced. So I'm here to tell you that as much and as often as possible, we will honor the traditions of Indigenous communities, including customary care, keeping children close to home, and keeping them close to what they're familiar with. And I'm committed to continuing the conversation with our Indigenous partners here in Ontario, and I'm committed to working with them on how to keep their children safe and cared for. Today's legislation and the associated reforms are a big step forward. And I want to emphasize that they are a first step. I know that reform doesn't happen overnight. It takes partnership and commitment from those in the sector and an open ear to children, youth, and families who use the services. And as Minister, I'm committed to hearing those voices and continuing with an open dialogue and building a system that works. And finally, I want to thank the Provincial Advocate for Children and Youth for his advocacy over the years. This has been almost 10 years of his work in this sector. And as Minister, I take his advice very seriously. I take the advice of our independent officers very seriously. And the other day, he asked me to deliver an aspirational message to Ontarians on behalf of the government. And I think this will capture it. So I want to say to the children and to the youth of this province, we're here to protect you. To every child, my goal is for you to have what you need and when you need it in order to succeed. To all the families in Ontario, to parents, foster parents, guardians, and so on, thank you for all you do to keep our children safe. My commitment is to have your back so that we can do what's right for our children here in the province of Ontario. Thank you very much for being here, and I think this is the part where I take some questions. So I'll stop there. Is that right? Not quite. Thank you. Bruce is going to come up, and then
the minister is going to take questions in a minute, but I just wanted to first of all say how incredibly inspiring you are and how incredible it is to hear what you've just said and your aspirational statement. We are moved by that, we're inspired by that, and we also will support you throughout the implementation because we know this is huge. So thank you so much. Thank you. I just wanted to also say that 300 of those 1,600 youth that you referred to between the ages of 16 and 18 came through these doors, and the difference that this is going to make is huge. So this is awesome. Thank you, Minister. Before the Minister takes questions, we're just going to close with a couple of words from Macy. And Macy is a young woman with lived experience who actually was at Covenant House 4 years ago now, and 5. And Macy is currently a student at Ryerson, and she's studying to be a child and youth worker. Come on up.
This is very bright. Hi. I just want to say that's fantastic. Super exciting that's happening. Okay, so basically, yeah, hi, I'm Macy. I was here at Covenant House in 2012, and I'm now 23 years old. I was living in southwestern Ontario with my family, and I left an abusive situation at the time and moved to Toronto by myself. I spent quite a bit of time on the street, like sleeping in parks and benches and stuff like that with my bags under my head. I also stayed at other youth shelters in Toronto as well. I eventually ended up here at Covenant House, and living here made a huge difference on my life. The staff taught me the importance of routine and gave me structure and helped me develop goals and rebuild my self-confidence and trust people again. They helped me get back into school, and I participated in several programs here at Covenant House over the years. For the first time, when I came to Covenant House, I felt that I wasn't completely hopeless and that I had a chance to move forward with my life. Staff here were super caring, genuine, honest, and loving, and I became super close to these people and built connections that would last until now, even into my adult years. Without these connections, I genuinely wouldn't be where I am. I even had one of my staff members write me my recommendation letter for a university, which was fantastic. So yeah, I studied criminology at Humber, and now I'm in my first year of Ryerson, and I love it. It's great. It's fantastic. I hope to work at Covenant House in the future. I really want to work here and change lives as they did mine. That's my goal. Help other people. So yeah, but this is a great change. It's very exciting, and it will help a lot of people like me. So that's great. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take some questions.
We have 15 minutes for questions.
Well, it's a long time. It's going to be 5. Okay, any questions? Yeah?
You say that children will have a voice in their service decisions. What exactly is that?
Well, I think that the legislation sets a tone across the province of Ontario. I think a direction that that we need to work with our agencies, and not only our children aid, child protection agencies, but working with organizations that protect and that help young people, and to make sure that there's constantly a connection with that young person. It baffles me that we can have organizations that are there to protect children, but are not directly talking to those children. That's unacceptable to me. So it's about building best practice policies and really taking direction as a government and moving that throughout the system to ensure that at no point there's a disconnect between the needs of that child, the direct needs of that child, based on that child's voice, back into the plan that's put in place for them.
And if I can interrupt, when you are asking a question, if you could just state your name and which outlet you're with or organization, that would be generous.
Thank you.
Laurie
Yeah.
Montserrat with the Toronto Star.
Hi.
Just to follow up on that question, when you talk about consulting children and youth, does that mean when they're being moved from one placement to another that their opinion will be requested, that they will be part of those decisions?
Absolutely. That's, again, it baffles me that, there could be cases where that's not taking place. And I was saying to some of my staff earlier, even the acknowledgement that child's voice needs to be part of the conversation to me is, it's like something that I would just expect, but obviously it hasn't happened in some cases, and we need to make sure that, we never have an experience in Ontario where that young person is not checked in with, and their needs are not being, are not being determined by having that conversation with that young person. So, I think it's something that we need to, as a government, state that it's an expectation for anyone who's working with government, who's working on behalf of child protection, to ensure that there's a constant connection to that young person. And it needs to be built in, right into policy. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
You also talked about preventing children being removed from their homes,
right.
Providing more support. Much of the research that we've looked at has identified poverty, lack of housing,
right.
lack of income, unemployment. Is this something that the child protection system is going to be funded for?
Well, could you imagine removing a child from a home where there's obvious love for that child, but the parent, for some reason, doesn't have the means to deliver the basic necessities? To me, that's, the child becomes a victim of the system. We need to look for other ways. We need to look for ways to, provide support for that child in the loving environment that he or she's in. We just need to acknowledge that poverty should not be a reason to remove a child from the mother and father. It just, to me, that just doesn't make sense.
Will funding be provided to ensure that doesn't
happen? And that's why, the different initiatives we have in government, we've changed the way, our child benefits have changed. They've increased. We've looked at ways to better support children and youth, looking for ways, for example, with the free tuition and just looking for more opportunities for families to look for ways to provide that better support. So, I'm working with Chris Ballard, who's responsible for the poverty reduction strategy, and we're going to be working directly with him, but we'll also be working with Mitzi Hunter in education. We're looking for ways to expand our nutritional programs here in the province of Ontario that we've been expanding over the years. We need to make sure that a young person has the food they need to, grow their bodies and mind. We need to make sure that parents are provided with skills if they don't have them to make sure they're making the best decisions for their children. To me, I think the bottom line is that there has to be an acknowledgement in the system that you need to look for solutions rather than just taking a child from a parent who may be out of their luck because they can't find a job and they can't afford to take care of that child when it comes to providing the basics. We just need to look for alternatives rather than just pulling that child from a parent and putting that child in care, which ends up costing the system more money at the end.
Minister Miranda, CP24. You mentioned that you wanted to make the services more culturally appropriate. Can you elaborate on what that means and how that comes about?
Well, we know, and I think, talking about the Indigenous community and the Black community, over 40% of the children in Toronto at the Children's Aid Society are Black. And, they represent, I believe, under 10% of the population. Why is that happening? Why is, and I know that the Toronto Children's Aid Society has acknowledged this as a challenge, and I know the leaders here today from the organization, so thank you for being here. But we need to work together. We need to figure out how to deliver, programming. We need to look for ways to ensure that staff has the right training to understand the cultural pieces. And I've heard from, it's not just about the Black and Indigenous community, it's the South Asian community, the Muslim community, Chinese community. You can't just pull a child from a family and expect them to live in a completely different culture. It just doesn't work. And, I think the most extreme example of that is young kids who are taken from Northern Ontario. I went up to the James Bay, Hudson Bay area and met with different leaders in those communities. And in some of those communities, the children are removed, brought down to Southern Ontario. And number one, there's culture shock. Number two, these kids are moving around from place to place. There's sometimes challenges in connecting their story back to the educators or people within the system that are working with them. And at the end of the day, these communities actually lose contact with these children in many cases. And to me, that's unacceptable. So it's making sure that when we're making decisions, we understand, from a cultural aspect, what's best for that child. Any other questions?
What's next? So you tabled the legislation. So is there a timeline? Is it?
So obviously, it's at the will of the legislature. I would hope that the legislation passes. I believe that if we went forward, I would anticipate usually a bill of this size would take a few months to go through the legislature, and then of course it has to go to royal assent. But I would hope that it would happen as soon as possible. And an important piece for me is the age of protection. I want to make sure that that's put in place as quickly as possible. And that's a big game changer in Ontario. Can you imagine, a 16-year-old is, removed or thrown out of their home. They're not protected by society as a whole. We need to put in place the right type of process that allows them to get the same services as a 15-year-old. So, yep.
One last question. There was a fairly significant report that came out about the care of children in group home situations, concern about lack of qualifications, the high number of kids who are being physically restrained. The police are called on them. They get records. The children's aid to police pipeline to the justice system. I don't see much about that. You mentioned no restraints in youth criminal justice facilities. Are you going to set limits in group homes?
Well, I think the bottom line is that when you talk about, this gives a lot more power to the ministry, to the minister. And it gives a lot of power. Anyone who works with the ministry, this goes into many, many different areas under child protection. You mentioned, the youth justice system, but it'll give the minister and the ministry more power to push forward policies and mandates on organizations like children's aid societies. And I believe that we just need to make sure we go through this process, through the committee process. And, it's a pretty comprehensive document. With French and English, it's over, I think, 640 pages. So it's a big document. It has a lot of material in there. But the committee process, if there's areas that we think we need to approve, we go through a committee process. There are amendments that are made. But this is a very comprehensive piece of legislation, proposed legislation, and I believe that it covers a lot of ground. Obviously legislation is never going to be perfect, but I assume that this proposed legislation is probably the most comprehensive and the biggest game changer in child protection in decades. So, yep.
So Cheyenne Rutnam, hi. So I'm here with Adopt for Life Ontario, but I'm also wearing my Pregnancy and Family Project hat, and I'm also a former young person from CARE. And so we're talking today about the importance of participation of young people in decision making, right? And in the briefing or the handout that has passed out, it has said that there's an expert working group that will be taking, action, and they will be seating mental health and child welfare workers. However, I think that the idea of the participation of young people should be included in this expert working group.
Yes, and that's my I agree with you 100%. That's my expectation. Yeah, that's it. If we're talking about children and youth being at the center of decision making, I think that's the best example you can use for being at the center, and it has to be done in a meaningful way and not just in a tokenistic way. So I agree with you 100%.
Cecile Brooks, will the new legislation consider or include the tracking of a child from the time that they come into care, and if there is adoption breakdowns, that child has the right to, because right now they come in as a new entry. And so sometimes their siblings and that may be totally separated from them the first time. Would they have the right to then take that back? And will that track be carried through that child's experience?
Right. My expectation is that once we put in the new accountability measures, if a young person's is brought into care, that young person's tracked, and it's a provincial tracking system. And it would be able to, locate and track that child's movement under one system. Yeah. So yes.
So I think
Thank you.
Any media that have any last questions, we would take the last question. If not,
Yeah. I just want to say thank you for your words today, and it's so nice to see you find your success. You said at Ryerson and the first year, so congratulations. And this is what we want to achieve. We want to make sure that young people have that opportunity. And I also want to just thank P.A. Koala for her work because she's been a driving force behind this legislation as well. Thank you.